Level up. How managed services providers can exceed evolving SecOps expectations. And endpoint security. Entering the era of AI and XDR. That and the latest news and trends in the managed security space coming right up on Cyber for Hire. Building bridges between managed security providers and their clients. It's the podcast where MSSPs, vCISOs, and end users take a united stand against cybercrime. This is Cyber for Hire. All right, welcome friends to episode number 30 of Cyber for Hire. How's everybody doing today? I'm Bradley Barth with the Cyber Risk Alliance in New York, and joining me today, just a few hours drive away on I-95, is my guest co-host for the day, Bill Brenner, SVP of Audience Content Strategy at Cyber Risk Alliance. Bill, thanks for filling in this week. By the time this show is published, you and I will be in Disney World for CRA's 2023 InfoSec World Conference. Not sure if you're a theme park fan, Bill. I feel like people either really love them and they're fervent Disney fans, or they hate it with a passion. But I'll ask you the same question that I might ask some folks for fun at the show. Do you have a favorite Disney ride that you like to come back to over and over again?
I do not. So I have a lot of friends in the security world, actually, who go to Disney multiple times a year and call me boring. I just don't get it. It's the thing. My favorite portrayal of Disney is the way it's portrayed in South Park.
Sort of that corporation that just basically has its hands on everything, and then yeah, exactly. All right, fair enough. So basically, what you're saying is we're there in the Coronado Springs Convention Hall. If a character walks by, there's no character that is going to fill you with all sorts of joy and glee and nostalgia. If let's say Tigger walks by and says hello, no thrill for you.
No.
All right. Fair enough. I am one of those Disney files that just seems to always find my way back there over and over again. So it'll be nice to be there. Of course, had to make sure that I gave myself an extra day on my own dime while I'm down there, because there's nothing worse than being down in Disney World and then the entire time you're there, you're just doing work and everybody else around you is having fun. So, well, listen, we've got a jam-packed show for you as always, but some news just can't wait, which is why we want to begin by sharing what's top of mind today. So here's your headline. An attack by the cybercriminal threat actor Scattered Spider, an affiliate of the Black Cat ransomware group ALF-V, attacked Vegas hospitality giant MGM Resorts, exfiltrating their data, encrypting their ESXi hypervisors, and forcing them to shut down systems at multiple hotels, affecting everything from slot machines to reservations to payments to even electronic door locks. The culprits pulled off the cyber assault apparently by impersonating an MGM employee whom they looked up via LinkedIn and then called up an IT help desk purportedly as that individual as part of an orchestrated plan to take over key accounts and reset their multi-factor authentication credentials. At some point, the perpetrators gained super admin privileges to MGM's Okta identity and access systems, and even configured a second fraudulent source identity provider that, according to Okta, acted as an impersonation app, allowing malicious actors to access targeted systems and applications via federation and single sign-on. Also, Caesars Entertainment revealed shortly after that they had also been previously breached by the same actors. In their case, only data was stolen, no major shutdown because they had apparently paid the ransom. So, Bill, big story, obviously. Why should this be top of mind for MSPs and MSSPs?
Well, I mean, first off, the thing that really astounds me about this whole incident is just how easy it was to pull off, and using LinkedIn and to dupe the gate minders the way it happened. And I think if you're an MSSP, the question is, how do you thwart that kind of tactic. And there isn't an easy answer for it. So, but it definitely showed how one tiny social engineering trick can cascade into something so huge. And I think we've seen attacks like that, but we haven't seen one like this in a long time, and certainly not affecting the gaming industry as it has. So
Yeah,
I
absolutely.
look
Yeah.
at this with the same sense of wow that I looked at the Colonial Pipeline
Mm-hmm.
attack 2 years ago, where it was okay. We've talked about this in theory as a danger, but oh, here it is happening in real time.
Yeah.
We've arrived at this place. And I think that for MSPs and MSSPs, the message there is this is here, this is now.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are managing IT security for big clients, this is something that you need to be paying super sharp attention to.
Yeah. Absolutely. You know, we actually even have a colleague at CRA who was there in Vegas while the attack was going down, and according to her account, she said it was just pretty wild to see how people basically had to wait online to make change in person, and it just created all sorts of chaos and inconvenience. And like you said, the social engineering element of it is very simple, but it was a mix of simple and complex, because what they also were able to do with creating this second source identity provider, something also to watch out for, especially for those specializing in IAM, because that's certainly a tactic worth further investigation as well. So interesting goings on there, and we're still continuing to see what the full repercussions are going to be. All right, well, that's our top of mind headline for the day, but now it's time to move on to our MSP and MSSP business strategy topic of the week. This one really is an equal mix of both business and security strategy, but with that said, presenting our big idea in business, level up. How managed services providers can exceed evolving SecOps expectations. The days of an MSSP or MSP being a security device babysitter are over. Clients expect more from your SOC, SIEM, and SecOps offerings, and evolving attacks will demand more of you. It's time to level up, but how does one upgrade from basic to top-tier services? According to our featured speaker today, there are several key steps, including more comprehensive cross-industry threat data collection, more refined contextual and meaningful analysis of threat telemetry data, and ample use of threat intelligence, data science, and security research. This interview will examine the key challenges and opportunities associated with these critical objectives. Our guest for this segment is Christopher Fielder, Field CTO at Arctic Wolf. Christopher has been in the cybersecurity world for almost 20 years, with experience ranging from military, government, and corporate environments. He holds 18 secure industry certifications, along with a master's degree in information security. As I mentioned, he is currently field CTO and director of product marketing for Arctic Wolf, where he enjoys researching emerging security trends and highlighting the expertise of the Arctic Wolf team. So, Christopher, thanks very much for being here today. Really glad you could join us. And as always, we're going to jump right into things. So, we open with the premise of the days being a security device babysitter are over. What does that mean, really, to just be a security device babysitter? If we're doing sort of a before picture and an after picture, and before is really prior to leveling up and evolving along with needs and expectations, what does that look like? And then compare it to really what you need to look like today in order to both meet constantly evolving threats and constantly evolving expectations of increasingly demanding clients and customers.
Thank you. Yeah, so I really like that metaphor for a device babysitter, right? Because when we think about like a traditional babysitter or nanny or whatever, it's a job function that it's going to evolve, and there's kind of a limited amount of time that you can do that job, right? Because you're babysitting kids that are going to turn into teenagers, and then they're eventually going to grow up and they're going to be gone. In the same way that these environments are going to evolve and they're going to change and they're going to have new equipment. And if you are static and you are providing, support for a certain set of equipment and that's it, well, you're really limiting what you're able to provide, because these, environments are going to change. They're going to have new equipment come in. They're going to have new devices come in. They're going to get rid of legacy stuff. And they're really going to outgrow you if you're stuck in that one area of, we're taking the alerts out of these few devices and then we're repackaging them and sending them out to you. And that's it. That's all we're really providing. And that's kind of the traditional way that it operated, In my career, I've worked with amazing service providers, and I worked with some service providers that weren't as amazing, unfortunately. And, the really good ones were able to do more than just, again, pull the data out of those devices. And sometimes they would just pull the alerts out of the devices, throw them into an email, and then shoot them to me. And then I'm stuck going, okay, so the device can send me an email with the alert, and you're sending me an email with the alert. So I've got double the amount of emails, I've got double the amount of alerts, and I have no additional context and no additional help, and I'm paying twice as much. What am I actually getting here, right? So then the good service providers were the ones that were saying, okay, what we're going to do now is we're going to actually eliminate the amount of alerts that you get. We're only going to send you the alerts that actually matter, and we're going to add context to that as well. And we're going to move beyond the idea of, okay, we're going to base our service around a set of technology. And I think that is the heart of this, right? The traditional concept of being a device babysitter is rooted in the idea of it's technology over people, when your service needs to be about the people, not the technology. So what are you providing beyond just, we can manage that device. Okay, what if that device goes away? Do they still need you? What can you provide beyond that device? So start planning your service for, okay, it's not about that device or series of devices. It's about what we can do with that and what we can do without it as well. So adding context to the information that's coming from the device, and then, being able to plan for, if that device goes away, we can still provide these capabilities. One thing I tell, service providers that are out there is, let's say your client has a reduction of cost, and they have to cut their technology stack down to a quarter of what it was. Can you still provide the same value? Can you still provide the same outcomes? What can you provide beyond just, I'm managing all these devices that are out there for you? And then that way, it doesn't matter if they add more tech, if they add less tech, whatever, you are still the root of their security, and you are still essential no matter what. And it doesn't matter what their tech stack looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that serves as a perfect introduction to now looking at the three pillars of what you could consider to be next level services in this regard. And I had mentioned them a little bit in my intro, but let's take a look at each one individually. And the first one that I mentioned was more comprehensive cross-industry threat data collection. So basically, meaning you're not just collecting information off of the various endpoints of one individual siloed client, but rather you're collecting scores of data points from across multiple clients, corporations, businesses, and then taking all of that information together to even get a bigger picture sense as to what's going on. So just talk a little bit about some of the challenges and opportunities associated with that, and then I may follow up with some questions.
Sure. So this is something I can't preach enough to, just across industry, is to bust out of silos, right? Because when you're working in individual silo, you have just a small set of data that you're really working with. If you are working with, multiple clients or a vast amount of clients, think of those as individual components that you can use as a larger connection point, right? So essentially, if you see something malicious occur in one environment, you can use that data, you can use those indicators of compromise, you can use whatever you've identified to further inoculate all the rest of your clients. You should absolutely be doing that. You have this wealth of information, this wealth of data that you could be threat hunting through, that you could be searching through, that you can use to, again, further support your clients and further secure them. In the same way that you shouldn't have a single point of failure. You shouldn't have individuals that are only assigned to maybe one piece of technology or one device. You shouldn't look at your data in only one area as well, right? Because that's going to be, again, that single point of failure. It's about building that larger data set to work from, and building that, that amazing lab almost, right? It's almost like a real world lab that you're living in and you're working in, that data lake that you are experimenting with and searching through. And again, I said threat hunting, but there's everything that you can do with that information. And then you also find that, across verticals, you mentioned verticals, and maybe you have one individual that's like, I work in a very small area of, one unique set of information. Why do I care about what happens in somebody else's environment? Well, because that could then bleed over into your environment. You never know, right? Because you're using the same technology in a lot of situations, a lot of cases. Something like, it was mentioned the Colonial Pipeline, but there was also like the Solar Winds incident, and there was the Microsoft Exchange incident not terribly long ago. Remember, these are built off the same technologies. So yeah, you may be working in different verticals, you may be working with different different customers or whatever, but a lot of times you're using the same base technology. So we need to understand, is there an exploit against that technology? Is there a weakness in that technology? Is there somebody that's targeting that? And then using that information to, again, help secure you and inoculate you from those threats.
You read my mind, because that was going to be the follow-up question I was going to ask, which is, somebody might say, hey, I work in retail. I have point of sale systems. What do I care what might be going on in a healthcare environment where they're using connected medical devices? But even though there might be some disparity in some devices that are using, there's also a lot of universal technologies that apply across a multitude of industries. And beyond that, even if the devices are a little different, sometimes an attack or a campaign or set of campaigns against one industry vertical is a precursor to those same threat actors starting to delve into other sectors as well. Somebody that attacks healthcare might move on to hospitality next or something like that. So it's always good to know what's going on in the bigger picture as well. Isn't that right?
Yeah, or let's think of it like this, right? Excuse me. But let's think of it like this. What is that healthcare industry doing? They're helping patients, and at least in the United States, they're not doing it for free, right? So they're getting paid, they're maintaining customer data, and they're processing credit cards, they're processing financial information in the same way that that retail company is. That retail company is processing credit cards and maintaining financial information and working with large amounts of money. And that attacker might be going after that, right? They may be looking for PCI, they may be looking for credit card information, whatever it is. And so they do have that common ground, and they could be, that may be an area right there where we need to look out for attacks against maybe particular PCI equipment or whatever it may be. Or there's probably, you mentioned point of sale. I guarantee in that healthcare industry, there's probably point of sale equipment in there as well. You go into a hospital and they have cafes, they have gift shops, whatever. And the attacker may see, okay, well, I know there's an exploit against this POS device, and then use that as a hopping point to get somewhere else in the environment. Again, there is a lot more common ground than we think, just because we think we're in completely separate industries. It's not the case whatsoever. Like, it is built on a very strong, similar foundation of technology, and we do a lot of the same things. And then a common ground between the two,
Yeah.
you're like, well, healthcare over here is very different than retail. Well, you say that, but what about pharmacies, which is a perfect blend of the two and is a perfect bridge between the two environments? And then it's very easy to go from one to the other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that is an excellent point. All right. Well, now let's look at another one of the pillars, and this would be something else that can help provide more data, more overall context to the threat landscape that's going on that ultimately can help you do your analysis and make your recommendations later, which is ample use of threat intelligence, data science, and security research. So how do you use some of those various feeds and reports to also then help provide a little bit more color to the data that you're collecting from the various endpoints?
Threat intelligence, especially for a service provider, is so important because you're trying to provide value beyond what just the tool is doing. I'm going to go back to that concept you mentioned before, which is busting beyond being a tool babysitter, right? Every one of those tools has built-in alerting capabilities, which is they probably have threat intelligence, they probably have detection mechanisms, indicators of compromise, artificial intelligence, whatever they're alerting off of, right? What can you provide on top of that? And then one of the best things you can do is use the telemetry from those devices and then add your own additional threat intelligence on top of it because you're adding something that they don't have. You're detecting things that they're not already detecting. So utilizing additional threat feeds and also developing your own threat intelligence, providing your own threat research is an amazing value to the customer, right? It's something they can't get just from that device itself. They can, they could potentially hire somebody else to babysit that device internally for them. But whoever they're hiring to babysit that device is not bringing in years of threat research and threat intelligence and indicators of compromise and detection logic that you can provide to the customer in the same way. So you want to find as much threat intelligence as you can, again, developing it yourself internally and looking for those external feeds as well. What I'm not recommending, though, however, is just going out there and grabbing every threat intelligence feed and every source of threat intelligence and loading it into the environment, because then you're facing the potential of alert fatigue, right? Which is something we want to get rid of. Mm-hmm. So it's about then analyzing, okay, let me match up what the devices in the customer environment looks like, the architecture, their mission or the vertical that they're in with threat intelligence that's based around that as well. Right? And try to marry the two and find the best fit. That's something that not every customer is going to be able to do as well. They're not going to first know that there's external threat intelligence. And if they do, they're not going to know which one's the best fit. So it's also acting as a subject matter expert and kind of a mentor of, hey, we can provide threat intelligence and we could also provide recommendations on the best threat intelligence for your environment that we can use to apply to really get high fidelity alerting rather than just more alerting.
Yeah. Well, again, you read my mind because as you were starting to give the answer to my first question, I was going to say, are there cases where you want to narrow down the scope of all of the feeds into something that might be most relevant to your client? And then you went on to actually very perceptually answer that question before I actually even asked it. So I think that gives us a really good sense of that second pillar of threat intelligence. Now let's combine the telemetry data that basically you were collecting across multiple sources and also the threat intelligence that you've been collecting and filtering. And now let's take the third pillar, which is just the actual analysis. So getting that more refined, contextual, relevant, meaningful analysis of threat telemetry data is really the third element of this. So I'd love to hear more about that, including and this kind of almost a little bit combines all three pillars, this thing I'm about to ask, which is just what in your mind right now is the most important threat-related telemetry data to be sure that you're collecting for your clients these days? If there's anything that's sort of trending in that area, I'd be curious to hear your thoughts on that.
Sure. So when we talk about, how about the escalation of alerts first, that is something that you can really provide to your client that is unique and is really necessary, is going through and paring down the alerts and only escalating the alerts that are truly high and critical, right? Your customer doesn't want to be overwhelmed. Your customer doesn't want to just be inundated with alerts. They can turn on every detection source on those tools and be inundated with alerts themselves very easily. They're hiring you because they want to pare down the alerts and they want to know, okay, no, you have looked at this and you have verified and vetted that this is a high fidelity, true alert that I need to move on. So being able to do that, and that's just going to take time and practice and expertise and understanding the customer's environment. This is something I can't explain and can't really push hard enough is don't treat every customer environment the same. Something that makes the company I work for unique is that we go in there and we learn the customer's environment as if it were our own. And then that allows us to add the context to then say, is this truly a critical alert? Is this truly a high alert? Or is this something that would be high in another environment, but not particularly this one, right? And we want to get it down to as few alerts as we actually can. Then going to that second part of that question, which is there a source of telemetry or an area where I would recommend people really look? In the research that we've done, we don't think that there's enough individuals that are really, looking at cloud and cloud in context as well. I talk a lot, when I'm talking to individuals out there about when it comes to cloud, the entire industry has taken the approach of can we, not should we, right? They've adopted cloud so quickly and just integrated cloud into their environment, but they've not taken the necessary security precautions that they really needed to. Some research that came out of Arctic Wolf about a year ago was, there was a statistic that said a little over 99%. And I know it's weird when I say that over 99% of organizations are using some form of public or private cloud, right? There's like 99.3, something in there. But only 18% of those that we found were using some form of CSPM or active cloud monitoring and management. That's about 81% of environments. They're not really actively monitoring and prepared to respond to their cloud incidents. That's a vast amount. And you think about, okay, so that is a huge gap that attackers are probably either infiltrating, right? So they're coming in through cloud, or worse, they're exfiltrating data through cloud. At the top of the hour, you talked about a certain group of casinos that had a big data exfiltration. I would assume that's probably exfiltrated through cloud through some mechanism or another. They're not putting it out of USB and not walking it out the front door, right? And they're probably not just throwing it out through email. They're probably slowly leaking it out through a cloud source that's not being monitored and it's not being properly secured. So it's important that we monitor our cloud very closely, but we want to monitor it in context and in balance with all the other telemetry that's out there. I look at it as a balancing act. If we want to look at the network, we want to look at the endports, we want to look at the endpoints, the log sources, the cloud, we want to look at identity, right, and authentication. We want to look at all of it together in one big picture, and then actually allows us to identify again, it goes back to my previous point, allows us to identify those high fidelity alerts, or is this truly an alert that we need to move on?
And it's not just managing the security alerts and knowing when to escalate to a client. It might even be a situation at times as critical as, do we need to move fast and respond to a budding incident by taking some kind of remediation action, like a quarantine or something, where you really want to make sure that you have the proper justification and grounds for doing so, or if you at least have to quickly escalate to get permission or act immediately. Do you think that, again, as things continue to evolve, will there be an increasing reliance on artificial intelligence and machine learning to help with making some of this analysis and decisions for what action to take? Is it going to continue to be a hybrid mix of human decision-making and AI-based decision-making?
I think there's going to be increased reliance on AI, but just as much reliance on a hybrid approach, right? You're not going to be able to take humans out of the loop because personally, I would never trust an automated response to do those containment actions or to do any kind of, response capability on its own without a human as a check and a balance for that. Because the moment you do is the moment that an attacker could come in and actually utilize that against you and essentially DOS your environment, right? I mean, if you have the artificial intelligence going through and isolating the systems based off of, okay, this looks suspicious, well, then you can have suspicious activity in multiple devices and suddenly they're all locked down. And those could be the same devices that are doing very important things throughout your environment. So yes, an increase in artificial intelligence as a tool to assist the individuals or the humans. So we need to remember that AI needs to be a tool that is utilized to empower and increase the individuals, not to replace them. And in any, in no situation we need to see is, okay, well, I just purchased this, this tool so I can get rid of some of my analysts, or I don't have to hire some analysts. Absolutely not the case. You're probably with that AI going to get even more noise now, and you're going to have individuals that monitor it and work with it 24/7, which is fine because you're going to get more alerts and you're going to get more capabilities, but you're also going to have to use it correctly. So I think AI is something that's very beneficial, but again, I can't stress enough. It is a tool. It is not a replacement for people.
All right, Christopher. Well, thanks. I appreciate all of your perspectives and analysis on this, and hopefully it helps our managed services audience today in terms of building up from that ground floor and adding additional tiers of services and expertise to their offerings to help in that always evolving race with the bad guys. So thanks again for your time here. Before we go, I do want to do one last bit with you that we always do at the end of our first half of our show, and it's a little segment that we like to call We Speak Geek. Now, We Speak Geek is basically a celebration of the geek and nerd culture that is so often associated with the cybersecurity community. After all, we're all a little bit geeky about something. And so I'd like to ask you today, Christopher, how do you speak geek?
Yeah, so I would say, geekiest or nerdiest thing is I am a huge Batman fan. I have an entire tattoo sleeve dedicated to Batman. It was the first movie I ever went to in 1989 was 89's Batman. It was a sold out theater. I went with my stepfather. They had one seat left. My stepfather bought it, snuck me in, and I actually sat on his lap at about 5 or 6 years old and watched the very first Batman. And it's been my favorite thing ever since.
All right. Now, you said that you were going to actually share with us who you think the best Batman is. So this is gonna cause a little controversy here. I have a feeling.
It's a little controversial.
Who was the best Batman on screen?
Okay, so
let's hear
that's the thing. So this separates real Batman fans from artificial Batman fans. But I believe the single best Batman of all time is Kevin Conroy. And if you don't know who that is, then you're not a real Batman fan. So Kevin Conroy. Yep.
I was actually wondering. Yeah.
Yep. So Kevin Conroy.
Go ahead.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, the animated one.
Kevin Conroy is, to me, Batman. He embodies Batman everything. In fact, if you've heard him in behind like the scenes or in interviews, he has an understanding of the character that almost no other actor has. And on screen, I believe that he is the best Batman because he's done, animated movies. And if you're a fan of the CW shows, he actually played a kind of Kingdom Come version of Bruce Wayne Batman in a couple of episodes. So, rest in peace, Kevin Conroy. To me, he will always be the true Batman. He is who actually Batman is. Now, if we're going to argue about somebody that's actually put the costume on in a legitimate movie, that's a little bit different. When you say who is Batman, it's a very personal answer. Like if you ask somebody who is Doctor Who, they say who their doctor is. That's the first person they saw, right? To me, my Batman is Michael Keaton, because he was the first Batman I saw. I have a great affinity
I would agree with that.
Yeah, right. But I have a great affinity for Adam West as well. I think he was just so campy and so fun. If I had to put them in order, and this is really geeky, right? I would probably say that it would go Kevin Conroy 1, Michael Keaton 2, Adam West 3, and then we get into the Christian Bale 4, controversially, probably Robert Pattinson 5, and then I would probably Val Kilmer, and then put what's his name? Danny Ocean at the very bottom. I forget his name right now.
Ben Affleck. George Clooney,
George
and you
Clooney.
forgot, and you forgot all about Ben Affleck,
No,
which I think says a little something about his portrayal.
I didn't forget him. I pretend that one doesn't exist.
Okay, fair enough. I think I actually pretty much almost exactly in line with you on this. Maybe Adam West gets a little further down for me
Okay.
because of the campiness, but otherwise, I think I mostly pretty much all agree with everything that you said. Yeah, Michael Keaton, Kevin Conroy, and of course the Kevin Conroy matched up perfectly with Mark Hamill, Luke
Yes.
Skywalker,
Yes.
who voiced the Joker. So, last question before we go:
Sure.
were you excited to finally see Michael Keaton step back into the cape and cowl for the Flash movie? And did it
I was so
bring back
excited.
all of your nostalgic memories
I
there?
was so excited to see it, and then I was
That
so
movie was a freaking mess, though.
so hurt. I was so painfully hurt by how it actually turned out. And then if I don't want to give anything away, but if you listen to what I just said a few minutes ago and then watch the very end of the Flash movie, and it's just like a punch in the gut. It's just awful. I want so much more for Michael Keaton. So, but you know what? I've heard that there is a Beetlejuice 2 coming out with Michael Keaton, so hopefully that's a redemption arc for him. And at the end of the day, I just love Michael Keaton. I just think he's an amazing actor and just a really good Batman, a really good, funny actor all around. So we'll see. Fingers crossed.
Yep. Agreed. Maybe there's still a chance he'll do that Batman Beyond
Oh, I hope
project he
so.
was recommended for.
I hope so.
All right. Well, you know what? We could talk about this all day, but unfortunately we can't. We've run out of time. But that was a lot of fun. I appreciate it. But for everybody else, please stick around because there's still another half of the show left to go. We're going to be discussing our big idea in security coming up next, which will focus on some interesting research on endpoint security that was recently conducted by the Cyber Risk Alliance. That and more coming right up, so we'll see you in a moment on the other side.